This is Professor L.B.Gyakawad's English Literature Web. I am Professor L.B.Gyakawad is discussing today the topic lecture number 377. The topic is the direct and indirect narration part 3. Before going to the discussion of the topic, I will request you to like, watch and subscribe my YouTube channel. I will request you to see all the notes which I have put in the description box. Now, I have said you that the learners have suggested me to take the discussion on the direct and indirect speech, and that's why today again we are in front of each other for the part 3. Here the part 3 is about the direct and indirect speech. So we will discuss the difference between the direct and indirect speech. When we discuss the difference between the direct and indirect speech, we can say that the direct speech is the direct talk or the direct conversation of the two persons. It means the two persons come together and they speak with each other. That is the direct speech. And the indirect speech is the speech which is done by the third party. It means that if these two persons are speaking and that has become the direct speech, the third party, that is the student or the teacher, makes some changes in the direct speech and he makes the indirect speech with those rules, and that's why it is the indirect speech, or it is called the indirect speech. The next part we are discussing is that direct speech in commas and double inverted commas. Remember, always the direct speech is written and spoken with the, I will say, commas and double inverted commas. As always, it is written in the double inverted commas with, I will say, comma. But while speaking, we cannot speak that, but we should speak that comma and double inverted comma. In this way, we should speak while speaking about the direct speech. Now remember, the direct speech is written in the comma and inverted comma. Why? That is the point. So it is the discussion of the two persons, means it is the discussion of the two persons' mouth. It means the two persons come together in front of each other directly, and that's why it is the direct speech. It is the speech of the two persons in front of each other, and that's why here we put that direct speech in the comma and double inverted comma. Then indirect speech is without commas and inverted commas, means we cannot use the commas and double inverted commas when we make the particular indirect speech, because just we saw that the indirect speech is the speech which is done with the rules of the indirect speech given as per our learners, the great scholars or grammarians. Being third party's discussion or being third person's discussion with the rules of the indirect speech means, remember, the third person comes and he changes the direct speech into the third sentence, I will say, into the second sentence, I will say, and he gives those rules there, he makes some changes, and that happens the indirect speech with the rules of the regulations. The third person alone explains the direct speech with the rules of the indirect speech, remember. Now we are discussing the rules of the indirect speech here. The first rule is the indirect speech is without comma and the inverted commas, means we cannot use there the comma and inverted comma. It means that when we do the indirect speech, we remove all the commas and inverted commas from our I will say direct speech. Means it never remains the direct speech, it becomes the indirect speech. It means that it becomes the sentence, and that sentence becomes the part of the paragraph. The comma used after the reporting verb or related with the object is removed. Remember, there is the comma and there is the inverted comma, they are removed. The first letter of the direct speech or reported speech is not written capitally. Remember, the first letter of the direct speech means when we make the indirect speech of the direct speech, then at first I will say that the beginning of the direct speech is with the capital letter, but when we change it into the indirect speech, we do not keep it as capital and we keep it in the small letter, that is in the, I will say, in the second font of the, I will say, the particular, I will say here, the learner or the teacher makes it in a small, I will say, in a small letter. But the proper noun is written capitally everywhere. Remember, the proper noun, I will say William, I will say Coleridge. These are the proper nouns, and all the proper nouns are put everywhere in the capital sense. Means in the I will say first bold type. The indirect speech takes only full stop finally, being always a simple sentence. Remember, when we change the direct speech into the indirect speech from the direct speech, then we see that indirect speech becomes the simple sentence, and that simple sentence takes always the full stop at the end of the sentence. That is the point. The indirect speech is always a simple sentence, just we saw. The simple sentence means what? It begins with a subject, then there is the, I will say, verb, then object, or there is the end, that is the ending part, and there is the full stop. That is the simple sentence, means SVOC pattern is there. The indirect speech is done using the conjunctions as per the sentence type of the direct speech. Remember, if the direct speech is the particular question, then the conjunction is used there, I will say if or whether. If the direct speech is given in the simple sentence, the conjunction is given there that. So in this way, the conjunctions are used very differently by studying the types of the direct speech. It means that in which type that direct speech is given, that type is studied and conjunctions are given in that sense. The reporting verb changes as per the direct speech type. Remember, if the direct speech is given in the simple present tense, then I will say that reporting verb will be in the simple present tense. And if it is in the past tense, then it will remain in the past tense, and total sentence will be written in the past tense. That is the discussion, or that is the explanation. The indirect speech is done with the changes of the tenses. For example, if said to is the conjunction there, sorry, I have made the mistake. If said to is there as the reporting verb, then we remove that said to and we use asked in place of it. So said to becomes asked when we do the indirect speech. If the reporting verb, that is says, is there, the indirect speech is done in the present tense. Remember, if the reporting verb is says, the indirect speech is done in the present tense. And if the reporting verb is as said to, then the conjunction is used. I will say, sorry, I am making again and again here mistake. If said to is the reporting verb here, then we can use the asked verb there. Means this said to reporting verb is changed and asked verb is used there. If the reported verb is in future tense, the indirect speech is done in the present tense. Remember, what is the explanation here? If the reported speech in future tense means if that direct speech is given there in the future tense, the indirect speech is done in the present tense. That is the explanation. If the reporting verb is said or said to, the indirect speech happens in the past tense. Remember, if there is the said or said to as the reporting verb, then the indirect speech is done in the past tense. Remember, if there are the words showing place or time, then those words I will say are changed as follows. It means if there is here, then it becomes there, and if there is now, it becomes then. It means that here is the word which is showing place, and now is the word which is showing time here, and these words are changed as here becomes there and now becomes then. Now the next is personal pronouns change as per reference. It means that if there is I, it becomes he or she. Means if the object or subject are related as the male, then it becomes he, and if it is female, it becomes she, I will say. And the last one is there that the reporting verb never changes its tense, it remains the same. Remember, we cannot change the reporting verb. It means if the reporting verb is says, it remains says, and if the reporting verb is said or said to, they both remain as the same. So here today we have finished the part 3rd. Again we will come in front of each other with a new topic. Till then, thank you very much.